Hola Will, ¿cómo estás?
Saludos, plano. Todo bien. ¿Y tú?
Todo bien, todo bien.
Muy bien.
En la región,
¿Cómo?
un poquito de calor en la región,
Oh,
en esta parte del globo. How are you?
No elegiste llamarte Juanita.
I'm great. Pues ahorita,
Very nice.
very, very nice. Ahorita estaba, pues, preparando esto para empezar a grabar. So, todos estamos grabando, ¿eh?
Ok.
Okay. Ok. A ver. Quise poner el video del otro día para terminarlo porque, ya, ya quiero terminar esto.
¿De qué se trata?
Ese, ¿cómo se llama? Ese documental donde, donde dice que la luna es una mapa y que tenemos energía, am, en, ¿cómo se dice? Por energía de magnetismo se han hecho muchas cosas en la tierra y el diluvio o sí, el diluvio de lodo y todo eso. ¿Has oído?
Sí, yo vi algo, pero considero que ese tipo de información solo tú lo tienes que investigar si tienes muchas ganas, porque
Sí,
es muy complicado, ¿no?
sí, y pues para probar todo eso, va a tomar, pero mucho tiempo. Si es que puede uno.
Yo vi algo en el canal de Libertalia, él explicó cómo es el movimiento de la luna y el sol.
It
Ajá.
is here that the beams will come.
No sé si tú quieres verlo y si tú coincides o si ya sabes algo.
Oh, no, no.
Me pareció
Converge
bastante
on.
como interesante, pero digamos que no lo comprendí bien. Él dice que en el centro de la Tierra, o sea, en el centro, en la parte central del plano, hay un sol justo debajo
No, no sé
de
si tú,
ese
no,
punto.
no sé si tú puedes mirar ahorita lo que estoy demostrando aquí en Discord.
Sí, 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 sí.
¿Es algo así?
A ver. Exacto, exacto, exacto.
Ahí,
Pero lo que él explica son
ajá.
como dos proyecciones, ¿viste? Que uno proyecta la luna y el otro proyecta el sol. O sea, son dos manifestaciones de una sola, de un sol negro, dice él. Vos sabés que el otro día yo viajando así en mi ciudad, viajaba, sería de este a oeste, y era de noche y estaba la luna. em, Nunca había visto la luna de esa manera, era como un semicírculo y digamos la parte que se veía la luna era la parte como una sonrisa, ¿viste? Pero era enorme la luna. La verdad que me impresionó,
Oh.
me impresionó esa luna.
Hmm. Pues sí, podemos ver eso después. Es porque solo tengo como unos 40 minutos en este video y lo quería dejar pasar ahorita mientras que me arreglaba y todo. Y después ahí regreso, ¿eh?
Yo igual lo estoy haciendo como tiempo, ¿viste? Porque
¿Cómo?
dentro de un rato salgo y... Ah,
Oh,
pues solo para saludar, ¿no? ¿Y cómo estabas? ¿Todo bien?
no, está bien, está bien. Tú puedes entrar, salir cuando quieras, ¿eh?
En Fernando, en Seven,
Seven Hernando.
Hernán,
Seven
y
Hernando.
él está como azapado ahí.
Sí, le traté de... A ver, le voy a poner Seven Hernando. Seven Hernando, así, ¿verdad?
Claro, es 7,
Hernando.
Hernando.
No tiene algo después, ¿verdad? Solo así.
No, no, la última que parece una O es un cero.
Ah,
Hernán.
Hernán. Hernán. Ok, pues sí, Hernán.
Ayer dijiste, ayer dijiste, nosotros en el castellano no, la H no se, es muda, se dice. No sé si tú sabes algo de eso.
Hernando. Oh, en
No, no,
español.
la H en español es muda, o sea,
Sí.
no, la H no. Por ejemplo, tú pones ja,
Ah,
ja, ja con la H y está bien porque ustedes escriben así.
pero se lee
Para
a.
nosotros, exacto. Y tú ayer dijiste coherencia.
Oh, es coherencia.
Coherencia, sí. No, pero igual, o sea, nosotros sabemos que tu español es pésimo, pero nada, mentira. No. Sabemos que vos tenés, no es tu lengua natural y por ahí tenés esa... ustedes hablan con la H, ese
Wow, plano, estás causando mucho estático ahorita, te tuve que poner en silencio. Am, pero sí, estás causando mucho disturbo. Ahí vas a oírlo cuando salga en YouTube. Pero pues sí, ah, plano, si te puedes salir y entrar otra vez, a ver si eso ayuda.
all right.
Sí, ahora sí.
Ah, no, es solo eso.
Ok, no,
Me
está bien.
encanta aprender el inglés.
¿Quieres?
Hay un youtuber, no recuerdo el nombre, pero él hace poco, por ejemplo, son todos shorts, ¿viste? Y él decía que, por ejemplo, la T ustedes no las pronuncian tanto.
¿La T?
T. Por ejemplo, hay la palabra que se llama listen
Oh, sí, es
y no
silencio.
es-
Sí,
puede ser,
es silencio. A veces.
pero no se dice listen.
Sí, listen. La,
Listen.
la T es silencio.
Claro.
Sí. Ok. Plano, gracias por estar aquí, eh. Tengo que hacer unas
Bien,
cosas
dale.
mientras hago eso. Voy a poner esto, eh.
Bueno, nos
Ahí
vemos,
sí,
Will, suerte.
si estás, ajá, si estás ahí hablamos después. Chao.
Dale, dale, chau, chau.
concentrate and generate the plasma phenomenon we call the moon. The idea of electromagnetic rays reflecting from the firmament and converging in the ionosphere may seem preposterous, but there are many homemade experiments you can conduct yourself to prove the power of concentrating light rays. As seen here, the rays of the sun reflected in the concave mirror are able to produce intense heat and start a fire. The reflected light rays focus into a point to generate energy. And remember, radiation beams akin to X-rays are much more powerful than light rays. If the moon is a point of focused, condensed plasma, then it has to occur within one of the layers in the ionosphere above us. All the various inert noble gases in our ionosphere appear at differing layers and altitudes. We looked at how these are charged by the sun's electromagnetism to form the plasma sky. At a certain altitude in the ionosphere, there are two layers of neon and helium gas. It is likely that the sun forms in a similar fashion within these layers. After all, helium is linguistically very similar to Helios. It is likely, however, that the moon is formed at the level of altitude in which the gas krypton is present. Krypton is known for its phosphorescent white light. It is also used to create non-thermal or cold plasma, as demonstrated by contemporary scientists developing this field today. The primary reason that the moon's light is cold and not hot like the sun's is not known, but it is likely due to a polarity produced by their interaction with our electromagnetic field in the ionosphere, the moon being the dielectric negative polarity to the sun's positive charge. The craters seen on the moon are likely from the generation of this plasma. Perhaps it is some kind of plasma emulsion that displays a kind of outgassing or bubbling, much like we see with urethane paint defects. Recently, bizarre theories have emerged that we live within one of these craters on the moon. This is not correct. The moon is some kind of phosphorescent, concentrated plasma and not a solid object. You can see the formation of this plasma and its craters right here. It is not solid, it is a light. And this is great because we have a very realistic and working model as to how the moon is formed. What we don't have, however, is an explanation as to how the composite image on its face is formed. As I said before, the image we are seeing on the moon is akin to a composite X-ray photograph of our greater realm. And it is not an active reflection, but rather a historical moment captured in time. And of course, no one knows how it is formed other than those in high places. The moon is a paradoxical phenomenon, at once a volatile luminary of plasma that waxes and wanes in its luminosity, and also a steadfast image captured at some point in time that does not seem to change. We only ever see this image on the moon, and it never changes. This strange and mysterious image that has puzzled and inspired millions could be a result of a natural, organic phenomenon, or perhaps even artificial. Again, only the controllers know. The word photo originates from the Greek photos. It means light. Hence we have words such as photosynthesis, which means the synthesis of light, in which plants harvest light energy and convert it into chemical energy. A photon is the quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation, such as light. A huge misconception is the notion that photographic imaging is not a natural, organic phenomenon. This is not correct. The word photograph means light drawing. The concept of natural light-sensitive material is well understood. Our bodies begin to darken when exposed to too much sunlight. Depending on the exposure to the UV, our bodies can develop tan lines. The light literally draws on us. Certain textures and textiles can fade or come to the surface when exposed to light, and there exist natural camera obscuras. A natural camera obscura occurs when a darkened space with a hole permits light rays to enter from outside the space, resulting in a projected image of the space outside inside the darkened area. We can even see projected images of a solar eclipse here on the ground underneath a leaf canopy due to the holes in the leaves. Natural camera obscura was, of course, the inspiration for the early development of photographic technology. Interestingly, the noble gas krypton, the same gas present in our ionosphere, has been used for years, we are told, as an integral component in camera flashes for high-speed photography. It is also an essential component in hyperpolarized MRI scanners. There is also a possibility that the face of the moon is not a natural phenomenon, but was a result of an experiment. Photographic and X-ray films are created through a fusion of a gelatin emulsion with microscopic silver crystals. Because of this, exposure to light is able to capture an invisible latent image. During light exposure, the silver halide crystals grow to visible sizes, and this is what is called printing out the image. Microscopic silver was essential in producing traditional photographic images. Without it, the technology would not have been possible in the first place. Interestingly, in their alignment of noble metals with astronomical bodies, the alchemists designated the moon as having rulership over the metal silver. The birth of modern photography began in 1800, we are told, when the uncle of Charles Darwin tried to capture the image produced in a camera obscura. He discovered that by coating white leather with silver nitrate, he was able to partially capture real-life images. The use of silver nitrate was developed further by Louis Daguerre, who went on to birth the daguerreotype and modern photography. But what is interesting is that silver nitrate goes by another name. They called it lunar caustic, in homage to the alchemists' association between the moon and silver. It's also quite interesting that many Masonic representations of the alchemists depict the sun and moon as reflected rays. And what are the coincidences that the alchemists, who probably didn't exist in the manner we are told they did, associated the moon with the very metal in which traditional photography is impossible without? This is not a coincidence. Those of the old world knew what the moon was, and perhaps an older civilization that came before them and that were also technologically advanced had a hand in rendering the image on the moon. It's not that much of a preposterous notion, considering that we are continually experimenting with things on a cosmological scale today, staging fake rocket launches that sometimes get caught on the firmament, developing artificial suns, and some demons in higher places are even trying to find ways to dim the sun. Humans have always overstretched their ambitions when it comes to the luminaries, and I don't see why advanced civilizations of the past would have been any different. But how this composite image phenomenon came to be is not important for our journey. It's what it shows us that is important. And perhaps it is best to leave the moon shrouded in mystery. Whether a natural or artificial X-ray photographic image, what is important is its composite nature. The image we witness here is a combination of at least two fixed images that are superimposed upon one another. The first image we are seeing, as Sturgios' groundbreaking work has shown over and over again, is a skeletal outline of our realm's land masses, akin to an X-ray, and in a way we have never seen before. In this image, we see all the continents of land we associate with Earth, or what is more appropriately termed the known world, represented by the dark areas in the image. And we also see vast bodies of land and continents that we are completely unfamiliar with. Sturgios revealed that if you treat the moon as the mirror image it is, and flip its image like you would with any reflection, then you can start to map our known land masses with utmost precision. And this is exactly what Sturgios has done, mapping the known world captured in the moon down to its Great Lakes and deserts. The striking similarities between our known world landmass and that captured on the moon are far too exact for it to be any kind of coincidence. It has been right in front of our faces every single day, literally. It is likely that no one has connected the dots here before because of this particular unknown landmass, which Sturgios has appropriately named Lemuria. And this landmass is very important because we know that it does not exist anymore. Theories of Lemuria's existence as a lost continent have been around since the 19th century, with most plotting its location somewhere around the Indian Ocean. Those in the 19th century also spoke of another lost continent called Mu. They are one and the same thing. Old maps of Mu plot the land exactly where it is on the moon. And in 2007, Masaki Kimura discovered huge structures, including pyramids, castles, and roads, on the ocean floor, some way from Japan, a location very similar to where Lemuria is plotted here on the moon. The continent sunk years and years ago, and this is very useful because it means that this image is not an active reflection, but a moment captured in time before the continent sunk. The second image we are simultaneously witnessing in our moon is that of the firmament itself. Yes, you heard me right. The moon is the only known official image of our firmament. The face of the moon is a composite image, and we have to separate the images to fully understand what we are seeing. We have the landmass of the greater realm, and this is one image from one angle. And then we have another image from a different angle. I can only illustrate this by showing you. This specific area of the moon is primarily what gives the phenomenon its spherical 3D appearance. The heliocentric liars love this area of the moon, and they have used it as a weapon of deceit against us. It is not a crater with rays, like they tell us. Look closer. Really look. This is not the markings of a spherical object. It is the apex of the domed firmament from within the dome. Watch closely. This is a composite image on the moon, presenting both images simultaneously. And this is an interior of a hemisphere dome. And now, you see, if you align the central apex point of an interior hemisphere dome, then it becomes quite obvious. If you erase the remaining vector lines of the dome, then it becomes really obvious. And once you see it, it becomes very hard to unsee. It isn't a sphere. That is an optical illusion. It is the markings of a hemisphere dome. And not only is this the interior apex crown of the firmament, it is also a reflection of the center of our realm below. This area of the moon lends its spherical shape because of the so-called rays that emanate from it. But as you can see, it is an optical illusion. The rays are actually hemispherical ribs stemming from the dome's crown. This area in the middle of these ribs is not a crater. That is the vortex directly beneath the highest point of the dome. The controllers have named this area Tycho. It was given this name, we are told, by Jesuit astronomer Giovanni Riccioli in 1651. If it was not for Tycho, then the controllers of our realm would have a very hard time convincing millions that they lived on a giant spinning ball. And like with everything else, they have used Tycho to hide things in plain sight. For instance, another 17th century Masonic astronomer named Pierre Gassendi called it Umbilicus Lunaris, the navel of the moon, which is interesting as Norse mythology uses the same simile of the navel to describe Vergelmir, the whirlpool in the center of our realm. Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey, one of the most famous science fiction novels of all time, features a crater on the moon named Tycho. In the novel, scientists find that there is a strong magnetic field emanating from the crater and discover that it is coming from a black cube monolith buried 15 meters within the crater. A black monolith, a rupes nigra, a magnetic black rock. If you separate the two images, then you can see clearly how they are in fact two images of two different angles that somehow have ended up superimposed on each other. We do not see any oceans or water mass captured in the first image, which suggests there is some kind of X-ray radiation at play. We don't see the vortex at the center in the first image for this reason. And again, no one knows how these images were formed. But if some kind of radiation beams were responsible, then the first image, the land masses of our greater realm, were most likely captured as the rays hit the firmament. And as those rays were reflected into our ionosphere and began forming the plasma mass we call the moon, it is likely that the second image was captured. And that is the image of the firmament, of the structure existing above us. And that's why we can see the outline of this structure, the stars beyond this structure, and the reflection of the vortex and other great deeps below. The moon is a masterpiece of distorted perspective, a plasma embodiment of as above, so below. And it's going to take a lot of work and careful consideration in smoothing out this distortion to try and get somewhere close enough to create a proper map of the world we live in. And because the moon is a disc-like mass of plasma, The first image of the land presents some curvilinear distortion, and you can see it here at the edges as the land begins to warp and wrap slightly. A lot of serious work needs to go into creating a flat projection of this distortion, but it shouldn't be too difficult because the distortion is only slight around these edges, and that's why Sturgios can map the circles of latitude, seasons, and time zones very accurately. A map without the distortion may look something like this. But important questions remain. If the central vortex is absent from the land image on the moon, then why has Sturgios plotted the land we assume is Hyperborea over here, which is not in the center? And what about all this other land? The sun and moon cannot journey above all of this land, as it would take more than 24 hours to circle all of this, and we know the paths of the sun and moon. And the big one, the one you've been desperate to ask about since uncovering the only map we have. Where is the ice wall that you flat earthers constantly bang on about? Let's start with Hyperborea. And here's where many flat earthers may experience cognitive dissonance. Although Sturgios has plotted Hyperborea here, there is no proof that this is the true Hyperborea. There are a lot of different land masses in this region, and we cannot be sure. It pains me to say that Hyperborea may not exist in the way we have come to believe. Mercator's Hyperborea is likely the work of the Masons to throw us off the real path. And this is what our purpose is all about, isn't it? Digging for the truth is difficult business, and as we dig deeper, we come to realize that artifacts we found before may not be as useful or important as we first thought. We all get it wrong, but stay with me, no need to despair just yet. It is very interesting that the Aberno Monte map was added to the Stanford University map collection and made available to the public in 2017, the same year that Flat Earth was gaining huge traction and people were starting to wake up. It's also interesting that it has been arranged as a planisphere. The huge individual sheets of this map were originally arranged as an atlas projection, but David Ramsey purchased the map in 2016, and the team got to work scanning each sheet individually and processing them digitally to wrap around a sphere. Perhaps the release of Monte's marvelous map was an attempt to keep flat earthers thinking Hyperborea was located at the North Pole, and to perhaps bring back any that were sitting on the fence and hadn't truly woken up yet. A very subtle act of manipulation. But why would they want the flat earth community to keep fixed on Hyperborea? I have some thoughts regarding Hyperborea, but first we must turn to the clocks. Those of the old world knew. They knew exactly the type of earth they lived upon, and it's displayed for everyone to see right here in the astronomical clocks. The zodiac dial here, or what is officially known as the ecliptic dial, on the Prague astronomical clock, allegedly constructed in the 15th century, does not divide its 30-degree constellation arcs equally. It is also off-center from the map behind and appears distorted, and so many clocks of the old world present very similar ecliptic dials. But let's look a little closer at this magnificent Prague clock. As you can see, the zodiac dial contains a border that presents a series of vertical lines. These lines represent a chunk of 5 days, and each zodiac section represents a month. Those of the old world use this dial to track the seasons, the phases of the moon, and to present the date. But in a realm of perfect circles, why are 6 of the 30-degree arcs here represented within a smaller space than the other 6? They all contain 5 subsections, so why are they different? As you can see here, the Prague astronomical clock presents the land of Earth in the middle. Why does the ecliptic dial need to be bigger and off-center with the representation of Earth? The official liars of our realm, the satanic controllers, have an answer, of course. They tell us it is because the ecliptic dial is a stereographic projection. Stereographic projection is a mapping function that projects a sphere onto a plane. All maps are stereographic projections. We have no accurate maps. Wikipedia tells us that the ecliptic plane is projected onto the face of the clock, and because of the Earth's tilted angle of rotation relative to its orbital plane, it is displaced from the center and appears to be distorted. The projection point for the stereographic projection is the North Pole. In their fabricated heliocentric model, The Earth has an axial tilt of 23.4 degrees. The controllers needed to invent the axial tilt to justify the entire spherical lie, to justify the seasons, the vastly differing climates, and to justify the absolute fixed position of Polaris over the true geographic north. The reason Polaris does not appear to move, they say, is because Polaris lies nearly in direct line with the Earth's rotational axis above the North Pole, the North Celestial Pole. Polaris stands almost motionless in the sky, and all the stars of the northern sky appear to rotate around it. Remember, everything in their model is moving at incomprehensible speeds. But we can see with our own eyes that Polaris remains fixed. If they did not invent the axial tilt, or what is known as the obliquity of the ecliptic, then they would have no way to justify this in their fairyland model of orbiting planets. Polaris does not move, it remains fixed. If you are in Iceland or America, you can film a star trail of Polaris, and it remains fixed. But it is not fixed directly overhead in these locations. The only place, we are told, to observe Polaris directly overhead at a 90-degree angle is the true geographic North Pole. You know, that place where no one ventures. And that's why they invented the tilt. They tell us that Earth's true geographic North Pole is tilting directly at Polaris, and as the Earth spins on its little axis, Polaris appears to remain fixed. They tell us that the star's steadfast nature is an optical illusion, but their lies fall apart swiftly when you consider that the entire constellation system of the stars above remain constant. We always see the same stars and constellations. If Earth was spinning on its axis while orbiting the Sun, and the Sun was zooming through our galaxy, which is also moving in a bigger universe, would the precession of the equinox really be that predictable? Would the constellations of the tropic circles of latitude really appear with such consistency in union year after year at the solstice, or would it appear a bit more random? They are liars, and we all know that water does not lie. Resting water does not curve or convex. For you see, the satanic controllers are masterminds of reverse engineering. The celestial zodiac ecliptic dial is not a stereographic projection. The entire heliocentric model is reverse engineered science, and they had to start at Polaris and trace their steps back to ensure they justified its fixed, immovable position and made sure it was compatible with their globe. The Prague astronomical clock has been altered drastically over the last 200 years. It suffered fires, been restored and altered. And you can see that here in the way the projection of the Earth behind the clock has changed over time from a flat map to a bulging, unsightly sphere. But look, when you align the ecliptic dial with the map of our greater realm, then this all starts to make sense. The zodiac constellations appear distorted, despite all having 5 equal subsections, because our location is limited within a portion of the greater realm, and this governs our observational perspective of the stars. The shape of this dial has nothing to do with an axial tilt. It is designed this way to reflect our known world within this magnetic field pocket. The realm is much larger, and therefore the firmament and circumference of the fixed stars in the water beyond is much larger than the circumference of our own magnetic field. Polaris is here, above the center, and this is so important. They tell us that our magnetic North Pole is separate from what they call true geographic north. Our magnetic North Pole is moving. How can that be? Is that just another one of their lies? No, it is not. It is a half-truth. They tell us over the course of a century, the magnetic North Pole has moved from its location just above Canada to near Greenland and is now en route to Siberia. It is moving fast. Why? The symbol of the swastika and the black sun offer some clues as to why. For years now, flat earthers have come to see the magnetic North Pole and geographic North Pole as synonymous, but they are not. As you know, the swastika symbolizes the vortex, but the black sun takes its symbolic message further. The central core circle here represents the iron core, the black sun, or what the fictional Mercator called the Rupes Nigra. But look closer. There is another ring outside of the central core. Remember, the black sun is the energetic core inside of the vortex. And remember also that in the heliocentric model, they acknowledge that the Earth's core is a solid iron sphere, but there also exists an outer core of molten iron liquid. They also tell us that this liquid outer core is responsible for producing our moving magnetic field and poles. This is why the pole is moving, because the magnetic field is not emanating from the solid core, but from a volatile outer core. This is what the second circle here represents. And like everything heliocentric related, all you need to do is apply common sense and flatten the curve, and things start to make sense. There is not a spherical outer core, but some kind of electromagnetic coil, perhaps even made of molten iron, surrounding the central solid core. At the core, we have a vortex opening, but the actual volatile energetic source is beneath. The central core is akin to a central clock dial. It's solid and remains fixed, and everything else moves around it. But it is also the keystone responsible for this entire movement. Everything surrounding our world moves. The stars above move, the sun and the moon, and the electromagnetic outer core under us, and all the while the land itself and central solid core remain stationary. And not only does this outer core move and take our magnetic North Pole with it, but it is highly likely that it moves in accordance with the precession of the equinox, in time with the stars above as they move from their fixed positions, which means that it probably moves 30 degrees of the realm's circumference every 2,160 years. The North Magnetic Pole is slowly moving, and it is as natural as the sun and moon's concentric journey above us. And this is why the symbol of the black sun is a 12-spoked wheel. Each spoke represents a fixed constellation of the zodiac. Each section is an individual age. And the result is a situation like this. Every 2,160 years, our North Magnetic Pole circles the inner solid core and vortex by 30 degrees. This is why the pole has moved from Canada and is en route to Siberia. It is traversing the outer central circle, or what is more appropriately termed the magnetic circle. We live inside of a perfect clock, inside of God's clock. The sun and moon circle our magnetic North Pole, which is situated roughly at the center of our known world's landmass. But this magnetic North Pole circles the inner vortex and completes a full revolution every 25,920 years, or what is referred to as a great year. Each great year consists of 12 precessional or astronomical ages of 2,160 years each. We are on the cusp of entering the age of Aquarius, and this is why our magnetic North Pole is en route to Siberia. As the North Magnetic Pole circumvents the central magnetic circle, the toroidal magnetic field moves with it. The sun and moon are bound in their revolution by our magnetic North Pole, and because of this, they move within our magnetic toroidal field only. This is why the magnetic North Pole will always be the center of our known world. As I said before, the first image of the landmass presented in the moon's face is likely akin to an X-ray image, and has not captured any water mass. And because of this, it has only recorded the areas of our realm with high density, such as the land, in the same way an X-ray image will capture the parts of our bodies with the highest density, like the bone, but not the blood in our veins. In a sense, it is appropriate to view the landmass captured here as skeletal, and because of this, it has not captured the water or ocean surrounding our land, nor does it display a differentiation between the frozen landmass and that which is not frozen. If the sun's concentric journey above us is bound by the North Magnetic Pole here and its magnetic toroidal field, and this entire magnetic field is moving with the pole, then it is likely we have a situation of a changing climate as this process unfolds. All areas outside of our magnetic field will inevitably be frozen and dark due to the lack of sunlight. And this is consistent with what some of the scriptures have told us. I saw the great rivers, and I came to the great river, and to the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of the darkness of winter. This is your ice wall, and it's not a constant, fixed wall. it is continually melting and refreezing with the revolution of the pole over the course of a great year and each astronomical age. Do you now understand why they are terrified of the ice melting, of our Earth supposedly heating up, and why this demonic joke of a man wants to dim the sun? They are using natural climate change due to the rotation of the magnetic pole to justify a whole host of useless measures and money laundering. They are terrified because they are on the verge of losing all control of the narrative. We must save the precious Antarctica from melting, the last unspoiled place on Earth. But as you can see, there is no landmass for us to call Antarctica. It is a complete lie. When they refer to Antarctica, there is only the Antarctic Circle, and a lot of the footage at the so-called Antarctica could have been taken at any location around this circle. As you can also see, the landmasses of South America, New Zealand and Australia all fall within close proximity to the outer edge of the greater world map, and would therefore be within close proximity to the foundations of the firmament itself. This is most likely the reason there is heavy military presence in these regions. The changing climate, the melting of the Antarctic Circle, is as natural as day and night. It is a macro process of the larger clock we live within. We have already discussed how the constellations that the sun is in during the equinox and solstice form a cross on the zodiac wheel when signaling the age and tropic designation. We'll look closer at the Prague clock again. The central dial of the clock is placed within the center of our magnetic field, and the sun and moon move within this field. Our magnetic field is off center from the overall greater realm. It isn't an even cross, but a true cross, or what is now referred to as a Latin cross or crucifix. We live within the crossbeam of the cross. And in case you hadn't noticed, our magnetic field pocket within the greater realm also forms a crescent moon. Not the type of crescent moon associated with the alchemical mercury and silver, but this kind of crescent moon. The same symbol that the controllers appropriated and redesignated to represent nobility. The cross and crescent are natural expressions inherent in the workings of the timepiece we live within. They are natural expressions of God's clock. And we got it wrong. Polaris is not situated 90 degrees above our north magnetic pole, in the region we call the Arctic, home to Greenland and Iceland. Polaris rests above the vortex at the center of the greater realm. And this is where the distinction between geographic cardinal directions and magnetic directions needs to be emphasized. When we travel across our known world, or the land within our toroidal magnetic field, we use a magnetic compass, and the magnetic pole is in the center. That's why when we travel from west to east, we go in a circle, and when we travel north, we go towards the center, and when traveling south, we move directly away from the center. However, there also exist geographic cardinal points. And what do the scriptures have to say about this? It's right there in Enoch's reference to the 4 quarters of the world. Our magnetic field, according to Enoch, lies in the geographic north of the greater realm. And the first quarter is called the east, because it is the first. And the second, the south, because the Most High will descend there. And the west quarter is named the diminished. And the fourth quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts. First of them is for the dwelling of men. The second contains seas of water, the abysses and forests and rivers, and darkness and clouds. And the third part, the garden of righteousness. The vortex is in the center of the realm, or what is more appropriately termed true north. The X-ray image of the land on the moon map does not display this vortex, but, as discussed, it is present in the second image of the firmament. At the crown of the firmament, we see it reflected, the navel of the world. It could be that the garden of righteousness that Enoch refers to, and what is also known as Hyperborea, is located right where Sturgios has plotted it. But this land is not the true north or central vortex. That can only exist in the center. And as stated before, there is some curvilinear distortion present in the composite image on the moon's face. I have used my little colourful map here strictly for illustrative purposes. I am not a map maker, but I did attempt to smooth some of this distortion out. Let's hope Sturgios tackles the distortion. And in both my quick attempt and the actual moon map, we do see a body of land right in the centre, right here. Perhaps this is the Garden of Righteousness, surrounding the central vortex. And perhaps Enoch's reference to it being located in our northern quarter is because it can only be accessed from within this quarter. Who knows? It is likely that the controllers deliberately put Hyperborea at the Arctic in the fraudulent maps to throw anyone of a curious and adventurous nature off track. If someone set out to find true north using these maps, they would fail. And because of the distinction between magnetic and geographic direction, finding true north would be a monumental feat, even without their deceptions. If anyone wanted to truly journey to the center of our greater realm, they would have a very hard time, and they would need to forsake the compass altogether. If the geographic south of our magnetic field is down here, with the lands usually associated with south, then the central vortex of the greater realm falls within our geographic north. But we would not be able to reach it with the compass pointing north. It is not located at our north magnetic pole. If you use a compass to travel north, you will end up traveling here. If the South Pole is the entire Antarctic Circle, then to travel to the true north, you would need to go south. But even then, this would most likely fail. If the center is made of iron, then at some point it would supersede the southern magnetic pole of our magnetic field. If by chance you were lucky to head in the direction of true north, then the compass would most likely fail altogether due to the iron core. As the mysterious text, the Inventio Fortunata states, here the ship's compass loses its property, and no vessel with iron on board is able to get away. The only way to get to true north is by celestial navigation via Polaris, a skill set that has been generally eradicated from common knowledge. And I bet these oceans are heavily guarded. We will be returning to magnetic fields later in our journey. And we really need to reappropriate the definition of the word planet. Planet, a smaller subsection or fraction of a much larger plane. Time is ticking, viewer. You are wondering why I brought you into this dark forest. Why is all of this important? Because once upon a reset, the established timeline is a lie. We cannot begin to map our revised timeline unless we start plotting it in accordance with the greater realm we inhabit. We need to apply the astronomical clock, the ages, to get closer to some kind of clarity. We are not out of the forest yet. And can you feel it yet? The entire matrix is starting to crumble. Everything we've ever learned, everything we've ever relied upon to shape our understanding of the realm we temporarily inhabit is now unreliable. And all we are left with is our own eyes. And all we see over and over again is water always seeking its flat level. We see structural remains that those in the history books could not have built. And we see a great evil multiplying. We only have our eyes and old photographs, moments captured in time, the act of photography, the art of juxtaposition, of comparison and contrast. We are so small, our world in the mirror. Where are the maps of the age of Pisces? Where has our history gone? And what has become of us now? Are we that different to those we see in the 19th century? Look at us, desperately searching for lost time. Our boots caked in mud, our entire days spent digging through the deception. Digging and moving the mud. Frantically digging. Tired and aching, but not giving up. And what do we find? The same things that our ancestors of the 19th century found. Glimmers of glory, of beauty, of pain, and wonder that remain stubbornly silent, offering no explanation for its existence or how it came to be. Old photographs and such glory. I haven't shown you just how impossible these structures are yet. The only thing these people have ever built is the lie, brick by brick, and I need to show you how they did it. Our world in the mirror, once upon a reset. There have been many great resets during our realm's history, all very different in nature. We need to look at all of them. How to reset time, to wind back the clock. The death and dawn of a new age. This was not the first reset, nor is it the last. It is happening again right now. Empty cities, such quietness. There is a war going on back home, viewer, and most haven't even realized. A peculiar and irregular type of war. Silent warfare, information warfare, biological warfare. A war as old as time itself. A war between the forces of light and those of darkness. And we're caught in the middle, on the cusp of the dawning of a new age. A war for Aquarius, the water bearer. Watch the water. And for us who fell in love with the truth, and who have resisted the darkness, we've had the armor of God on now for so long. How many of your friends and family have deserted you? How many of them left you stuck in the mud? And you've remained steadfast. But it's time we took a stand and became very loud. It's time to draw the sword of truth. The blind are going to need us because nothing can stop what is coming. The legend of Offerus, bearing Christ, bearing the truth so it can reach the masses. I will try my best to continue our journey, but as things become even darker, the lights will inevitably go out, and our journey may end here. But you have more than you know, more than you need. You've seen enough deception. Do not believe a single thing they say. We have to try and keep moving. The clock is ticking, and we don't have much time. We need to go to Siberia. There is something frozen in the ice that needs examining. Come on, it's time to address the big question. Who were the citizens of the future? And it's not what you think. The timeline is wrong, and the maps are fake. This is not the answer. No. For you see, they had a king over them, and not just any king.
Ok, pues terminamos ese. Al fin. Saludos a todos. Gracias por mirar, oír, por la vista, por los likes, suscripciones y por compartir. Vamos a seguir. Vamos a seguir con otro video. Pero para mientras, solo les quiero decir que también hay super chats ahí en el chat. Si quieren dar donación, lo que sea, está bien. Gracias. Si no, pues gracias por estar aquí y darme la vista. Vamos a seguir. Si es que puedo encontrar otro de mi, pues, otro video en que donde yo, pues, yo estaba mirando cuando yo era, pues, apenas entré este tema. A ver, un minuto. A ver, vamos a The Truman. Oops. The Truman. ¿Es una palabra? Sí. Canal. Ojalá que es este. A ver. Let Earth Este, no. Mm, ¿Dónde está? Uy. Oh, aquí está. El primero.
So many times during spacewalks outside the International Space Station, we can see air bubbles rising up. Can you touch on how there are air bubbles in space? So yeah, like a lot of times during the footage, the NASA footage, you can see bubbles coming up out of the helmets or kind of from underneath you. How do you explain bubbles in space?
It's a really harsh environment out there, and the outside of the space station gets beat up pretty good.
The moon orbits around the Earth, much like the Earth orbits around the sun. However, while the Earth takes about 365 days to travel once around the sun, 1 year, the moon completes its orbit around the Earth in only 29.5 days, or about 1 month. Just like the Earth, the moon has a day side and a night side, with half of it in sunlight and half of it in darkness at any one time. As the moon travels through its orbit around the Earth, that dividing line between day and night, called the terminator, is visible from different angles, giving the impression that different amounts of the moon are lit up on different days.
We always see the same old side of the moon because the moon rotates exactly once on its axis each time it orbits Earth. If it weren't spinning at all, we'd get at least one 360-degree view of its surface with each lap. If it were spinning twice as fast, we'd also see the moon's entire surface more than once per orbit. But instead, our moon's motions, like the spin and orbit of most other moons in our solar system, are remarkably in perfect sync. We always see the same old side of the moon because the moon rotates exactly once on its axis each time it orbits Earth.
Check this out. The moon is rotating, right? Look at the line, if you don't believe me. Vertical, horizontal, right? But it's rotating at a rate that matches the revolution, just so that only one side of the moon ever faces Earth. And that's exactly the situation we find ourselves in today. The only side we ever see we call the near side. The side we don't ever see we call the far side. The moon can only rotate so fast because Earth won't let it do otherwise. As a consequence, the moon rotates only once for every revolution, and only one side of the moon ever faces us.
One of the main defenses that people make to show or argue that we had to have gone to the moon. And they often say that there would have been so many people involved in the conspiracy it would have been impossible to keep it quiet. The only people who would have known about the hoax would have been those on a need-to-know basis, and that would have been very few people. You have your astronauts, you have the people filming everything and building the locations, and you have the people authorizing it, and that's it. Everybody else would have been doing their one task in the line and sequence of events that they were responsible for. And this segues into another defense made by people who believe we went to the moon, and that is, why didn't NASA have them do things over after they made mistakes? And the reason for that is that this was live, and not everybody was in on it. And those hundreds of people you see at Mission Control, they're not in on it. You got the surgeons, they're monitoring the heart rate. You have the data guys, they're monitoring whatever is coming in on their feed. And everybody is looking at a live event, and all over the world, people are monitoring a live event. So there were no do-overs. Going back to what John Young said, by way of illustration about the photo guys would have received the film. The film couldn't be developed on the moon. It had a chain of custody. That had to take place, and those guys were not in on it. So what has just happened to cause this stain pattern to emerge? The answer is orange juice. It has been well documented that the astronauts had a problem with the suction straws inside their helmets that allowed them to take sips of orange juice. The straws would accidentally squirt orange juice all over them and into their helmets, and this was a big problem on the mission, and the orange juice actually seeped into the neck ring. And it appears obvious now that the orange juice leaked through the neck ring at Station 9 and caused the camera to be stained. And that is direct evidence that they could not possibly be on the moon, because if orange juice could leak through the helmet lock, then the helmet lock was not properly sealed to protect the astronauts from the vacuum of space. And this is because the helmet and the neck ring, in order to be airtight, must also have been watertight, because water molecules are bigger than air molecules. So if water escaped, then oxygen also escaped, and the suit would not have been pressurized, and in that case, the astronauts would be dead. Now, I am not the first to suggest there's some sort of Geppetto character in the rafters above, pulling the astronauts by some sort of harness with fishing wire. Like, why does Charlie Duke want John Young to push on his head here?
Oops, here we go again. Give me a help. There you go. Okay, just push, start pushing on my head. Give me a hand. Okay, here we go.
So he pushes down on his head and his feet seem to levitate backwards.
You see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying. But maybe you've seen a demonstration of a bell under a glass jar. With normal air inside the jar, you could hear the bell clearly. But when the vacuum pump drew the air out of the jar, there was nothing inside to carry the vibrations of the bell. Nothing until the air was let back into the jar.
They can't get your photo numbers. And this is clear tube number 2. Okay, just in fact, you're almost driving without a hammer. But if you'll hand it to me, I'll get it in a second. I'm going to take a couple more shots of this before we leave. Get all in, I get the pictures. All right? Drive in real easy, Houston.
The sounds in space, it's odd to have a hammer or a metal tool and bang it against something and hear absolutely nothing. You can, sound won't travel in a vacuum, so there you are outside and you could be hitting something, no sound at all.
In space, since there's no atmosphere, there's no air, if you bang on something while you're doing your spacewalk, you will not be able to hear that.
And this leads us to the dilemma of our final segment. All modern astronauts, such as Piers Sellers and Mike Massimino, claim to hear absolutely nothing when they're out on the International Space Station in the vacuum, banging away with metal tools and objects, whereas during the Apollo missions, all kinds of sounds have been recorded that should not be possible if they are on the moon in the vacuum of space. Even when the astronaut in the photo to the right hit a metal tube into the ground with a hammer, no sound was made. All of the sounds so far analyzed were made by the astronauts as they were handling tools, but now we are going to analyze some sounds that are made a distance away from the astronauts. So what you just saw appears to be a smoking gun. That scene, which was broadcast live to the world during Apollo 15, shows astronaut James Irwin. He takes this cord or band off of a canister, and those canisters are in the mesa table, which Irwin is standing in front of. He unravels the cord, which has two metallic locks at the end of it, pictured here. They look like bullets. He takes that off, he unravels it, he reaches back with his right hand, and he throws the cord away. Let's take another look at it. So the argument has been made for the hammering that the sound is coming through the glove and it's miraculously getting into the microphones. But we don't have to deal with that argument because James Irwin releases the object and it hits the ship and he's not touching it, and that sound is picked up by the microphone.
It was almost dangerous. You lose sight of the fact that it's a vacuum out there, and if you spring a leak next to it, you're going to be dead.
Uh-oh. Nice soft baby landing. Yahoo! Boy, do I like to run up here. I feel like Bugs Bunny. That's neat. And here comes the Boxy twin. You're pretty agile there, Twinkle Toes. I'm going out for the ballet when I get back. You learn another line of work up here. Yeah, while you're bouncing around there, you might keep an eye out for a nearby crater. All right. I've been on my knees twice to get this. John? Yes, sir. You are black from the knees down. No way to avoid it. That's why I'm glad the pressure suit bends. John, you are filthy. I tell you, there's a pot calling to kill black. Hey, here's a rock I'd be glad to see in Houston. Man, Tony, you don't know how much fun this has been.
Bazinga. Caught in the crossfire.
The sailor thinks that he's traveling around the Earth this way, when in effect he's traveling around the Earth this way.
They began flying it around the world, from Abu Dhabi last year, with stops in India and China, then across the vast Pacific.
Does running around your neighborhood prove that the neighborhood is round?
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
The person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. Imagine what you know.
If you were to go to NASA, it's all fraud, it's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent. There are no images of Earth from space. Put an end to this topic once and for all, turn the Hubble round and show us Earth in real time, but they will not do it. They can't do it. It doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. Looking at these images of Earth, including the one they call the Big Blue Marble, which was released in 2002, I think. Zoom into it with Photoshop, you'll see where they've used the clone tool in Photoshop to take a picture of one of the clouds and stamp it in various places around the picture. They got lazy.
If the Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference, there must exist a curvature drop of 8 inches times the mile when you square the mile. 1 mile means there should be an 8-inch curvature drop. 2 miles, 2 times 2 times 8 is 32. That's 32-inch drop. 3 miles would be a 72-inch drop. And this would exponentially continue. Here's the longest bridge in the world, the Danyang Kongchon Grand Bridge in China. 102.4 miles long. There should exist nearly 7,000 feet of curvature drop in that bridge. 7,000 foot curvature drop. Do you see it? It ain't there. Look at the horizon. It's flat.
I was an airline pilot for Delta for 26 years. A pilot's primary flight instrument is his artificial horizon, which he has to be maintained level to keep from climbing and descending. From a cockpit, weather permitting, I could see hundreds of miles in all directions, viewing cities connected by roads across the flat plain as far as the eye.
Discovering the true nature of his world until now.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented.
But why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat.
Imagine what you know.
The surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. The surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass.
They're just laughing at us now, man.
Somebody said, is this some kind of observational test? People that went to the gym say, is this an observational test? Because these are Atlas stones. These are these medicine balls that we have in the gym, and we've just filtered one up and told you it's a planet. And when you take it into Photoshop and change the levels and what have you, you can do this with your own pictures and see if the background's smooth.
Well, I mean, if you launch a satellite off this Earth, and this Earth is being carried along with the sun, how is that satellite keeping up? And how are we remote controlling this thing from 7 billion miles away? And then worse still, what the heck kind of Wi-Fi do they got going on that they can email us pictures of Pluto from 5 billion miles away? And now they're saying they want to take it out even further. They figured they've done the job around Pluto, so they're sending this thing out another billion light years, and they're supposed to cover that billion light years in, or not light years, billion miles. I'm sorry, billion miles in 3 years to go check out some other asteroid or something out there. Really? And you know, I couldn't even keep my cell phone reception across Lake Michigan. But yeah, we're emailing pictures of freaking Pluto from 5 billion miles away.
Yeah, I've done it, and the background is as you'd expect. It doesn't look like you pasted something in, and it's grey. I mean, you can't really see it on the screen, but you'll see it. You see the HD version, but the background is graded. There's several shades of black in there. It's not just a probe taking a picture, as they tell us it is. This is, I mean, it looks like some kind of new domestic appliance of some kind, but it is actually the Kepler telescope, and it's how we believe there's lots of Earth-like planets out there. It's about the size of a house, and lots of gold foil again, obviously. And here's a picture of the Kepler telescope in space.
It's unbelievable. But yeah, check it out. So this one represents 5 hours of rotation. No clouds are moving. No clouds. Clouds don't move. Okay? No clouds. No clouds are moving in here. So that's 5 hours. We go to the one that was just posted yesterday, and we got 4 hours. 4 hours of rotation, and yet the clouds aren't moving. Okay, guys, you know, on Earth, clouds move. You know, go outside, set your camera up, look up in the sky, you know, point your camera to the sky, record maybe 4 hours worth, bring it into a computer, speed it up so you get a nice time lapse like this. You're going to see the clouds doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But that never happens with NASA. I mean, it didn't even happen with Jupiter, for crying out loud, in the last couple of years. Russian Vids did a video on that. I'll just put a real quick clip here of something he just did.
Just another example of NASA faking space. Let's take a look here at this supposed image of Jupiter. Nothing more than CGI fakery. The supposed auroras towards the north. Let's take a look here. Again, at NASA's official website, where it states Hubble captures vivid auroras in Jupiter's atmosphere. Here's the problem. The date of June 30th, 2016. Now take a look at this. Another so-called official image of Jupiter. This one's from back in 2014. You see the problem here? Now let's take a closer look at the supposed 2 images provided from NASA of Jupiter. Here's the problem. Again, 2016, 2014. What's the difference here? Well, the difference is they added the supposed auroras on the north, and this is nothing but a Christmas tree. Give me a break. Take a look here. I mean, all the clouds are in the same exact position. Just the 2016 image is a bit, I would say, darker. This is a bit lighter in 2014. Here's a side-by-side. People can't see what's taking place here with NASA. Nothing more than fakery. I mean, give me a break. This is a complete insult. If you have a brain in your head, supposed clouds moving at the speeds they supposedly do, and they get the same exact image from 2 years apart. Not possible.
Okay, you can watch the rest of his video. I put the link in the description below. He goes and continues to rip a hole into NASA because they deserve it, folks. And if you still believe NASA after they continue to put out crap like this, then truly the aspartame and chemtrails and fluoride has done a job on you. All right, you know, people wonder why I'm building sites like testingtheglobe.com. This is why, okay? These people are full of crap. All right, now, I mean, early on in my investigation right here, I put this right here, okay? This is on testingtheglobe.com. This was in the beginning of my investigation, looking into the photographic evidence, right? Looking at these 2 pictures, right? Look how big the United States is on the left compared to the one on the right. And this was also done by a satellite. It says the blue marble image of the Earth taken from the VIIRS instrument aboard NASA's Earth observing satellite. They admit that it's a composite image.
Last week, scientists at NASA released this. The shot is compiled from data from NASA's VIIRS instrument, which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this, and then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from Space album, which may be one of the most mind-expanding collections of images in human history. Then in 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. And it had wide appeal too. For example, it ended up as the default background on the iPhone.
I didn't even know until I bought an iPhone and turned it on and kind of did a little happy dance.
Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
To us, the really cool thing was the data set. Up until that point, there was no realistic color map of the globe anywhere.
So the land layer here comes from
the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer aboard Terra.
And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Wait, what? So you saying pictures of Earth are photoshopped?
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
There was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it.
Right? Look at that. Look how big the United States is right there. Huge. It's taken up half the globe. Okay, and then you look at the picture on the right, you know, the NASA.gov website, I got the link there, describes it the same way, but then it describes this other picture here. Today, April 22nd, 2014 is Earth Day, and what better way to celebrate than taking a look at our home planet from space? NOAA's Goes East satellite captured this stunning view of the Americas on Earth Day, April 22nd, 2014. Wow, all of a sudden the United States shrunk and the color of the ocean changed. These are two satellites. Two satellites supposedly took these pictures from satellites from about 1 million miles away. And, you know, of course, there's this Galileo space probe from 1.3 million miles away, allegedly shot this time lapse. This is 25 hours that was supposedly recorded on December 11th, 1990. Okay, you click on that, and you watch 25 hours of the Earth rotating and no clouds are moving. 25 hours. Really? You don't see clouds arriving, dissipating, changing, morphing. No, I mean, there's a little bit of perceived motion maybe right there, but other than that, no. In NASA's world, your Earth doesn't have moving clouds. Everything stays the same. Stays the same on Earth, stays the same on Jupiter, and you guys believe it. And you guys make fun of everybody out there questioning all this stuff and saying, you know, the only proof we have that we live on a ball is coming from these people, and they put out crap like this, and you believe it, and you call everybody else stupid. You know, I think we need to demand our money back. Seriously, I mean, we are getting ripped off. You know, we're giving these people billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars a year, and they can't even produce better images than this. I could make better images than this in my 14 by 12 office space with a few $100s worth of off-the-shelf software. The only conclusion that I can come to when I look at stuff like this is that their graphics department, the people that are running this, or the people that are actually doing the artwork, have got to be putting this stuff out as cheesy as they possibly can, and putting memes in the imagery like spelling sex in the clouds, so that you guys will get a clue. These guys are probably under some sort of non-disclosure, and, you know, maybe under the threat of life and limb, for crying out loud. Who knows? Wouldn't put anything past this government. Okay? These things are being put out there for people with brains that can look at this stuff and say, this is crap, this is not real, and why should I ever trust anything from NASA ever again? That's what you should be thinking right now. Unbelievable. Wow. Anyway, just another day of people believing more of NASA's crap.
I can't believe that every single day I'm thinking about flat Earth. In 2016, I'm like, why? Oh man, it drives me nuts, but it's always on my mind. And there's something to it. I feel like it's true. Like, I think it's true. I'm not going to tell you it's 100% real, but I think I'm more convinced than ever the Earth is flat, and we need to get the word out that we're being lied to, because I'm certain that it's not a globe. That's the whole thing I try to tell people. You know, they're like, you're a flat earther, you think you know everything, what's under the flat earth and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know what's under, I don't even know where we're at. So what's going on, man? NASA, sometimes they tell us the truth, and us conspiracists and people with eyes to see and ears to hear, we're like, did you hear what he said? They just admitted that they can't, you know, go past low Earth orbit or something like that. And there's plenty of these videos all over the place. Like my buddy from Germany, Cesar, he posts some videos with the NASA astronauts admitting that they can't go past low Earth orbit. But anyway, it's like you know, they tell us the truth, and us, we're like, oh yeah, why isn't something being done about this? And then the NASA fans, science buffs, space freaks, you know, they're like, nah man, you're taking that out of context. He didn't mean it like that. Go kill yourself. You're retarded. Don't have children. You know, the basic three. The 3-point combo. Go kill yourself, retarded person that shouldn't have kids. Beep, 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 you know. So they hit us with the three piece. And we're like, nah man, these guys are telling us they can't go past low Earth orbit. Listen to this first guy that I got lined up. He's Mark Geyer, the program, the manager for the Orion program. Just like a 10-second clip of him basically saying that we're gonna finally get to go out and venture into outer space soon with the program that he's working on. And it's pretty crazy, man. You just gotta listen. All right, so check out this first one.
NASA's next spacecraft, already being built and tested across America, will do those things and more.
This is the spacecraft that's going to take humans to explore the solar system. It's the next big step for NASA in exploration.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit.
Now, let's look at, there's a clip from 2014. It's NASA engineer Kelly Smith. It's a dude. If you have kids, don't name them Kelly if they're dudes, all right? So anywho, there's a dude named Kelly Smith, NASA engineer, 2014, with this epic video, with this epic music talking about the Orion project and how we're finally gonna go up and test out the Van Allen radiation belts to see if we could learn more about them so we could finally pass humans through them. But the thing is the moon is on the other side of the Van Allen radiation belts, which I want to talk about the Van Allen radiation belts in more detail a little towards the end of the video, but check out this clip.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
All right, this next clip is from Terry Virts. He's an astronaut in the ISS in 2015, just a year ago, said that right now we can only fly in low Earth orbit. Hopefully soon with the building blocks that we're building, we'll be able to explore, and we got a lot of destinations that we want to go to, like the moon and Mars. It's just weird what these guys are saying. So listen to what he says.
Plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
See, like allow us to do that eventually. We're working on it, and so it can allow us to do it eventually. But 45 years ago, we were going to the moon. How the hell did we go to the moon if we have all these issues now and we lived in a more advanced technological society? NASA's been taking billions of dollars each year, and we've only went to the moon 45 years ago, and now we can't even get past low Earth orbit, and it's just, these guys are full of shit. You got to understand this, and everybody needs to understand this. It's just out of hand. They tell us the truth, but they also lie. When they lie, most people believe them, and when they tell the truth, It's in one ear, out the other. They filter it. They don't even want to hear that. Like when they tell the truth, they don't believe them. When they lie, they do believe them. We have been conditioned in a way that is really hard to comprehend. It's on a level that's just amazing. I mean, a lot of people are waking up, especially when you're on YouTube and stuff, and on your social networks, you get the feeling that a lot of people are waking up. But you go outside and you don't see much, there's a lot of zombies. And I'm not trying to be mean, these are my people. But go outside and talk to people, they don't even know about the videos on YouTube. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? I watch the news in the morning with my coffee and stuff, and they don't know about all this stuff. A lot of people are finding out, and more people are sharing this stuff. Still a lot of cognitive dissonance out there, though. But either way, I'm feeling good about where we're headed. We got a lot of good stuff going. But yeah, man. So NASA's telling us the truth, and they aren't speaking in parables. It's not like some mysterious, words to decode. They're flat out telling us that they can't go past low Earth orbit, and we're in 2016. And people like the private space programs like SpaceX have been trying to get a rocket up for years. Successful test flights. They don't ever have any, and it's like, there's something going on, man. How long can they continue to do this?
That's the point we've got to now, where they are literally laughing at our gullibility and stupidity that we continue to believe they're nonsense.
Yep, absolutely. That's what people look at is, believe. I don't know if they have to, if it's part of like the deal God's got level that they have to outline or show their ends, but in a hidden way. And I believe that's why, people always show stuff that in Hollywood movies. Like, well, where do you think they're getting their information from? They're not making this stuff up because there's no new thing on it. What has been shall be again. So the stuff we're seeing in movies is to push an agenda. It's to plant seeds in your head, which we see with the alien agenda. You get these aliens showing up and claiming to be our creators, and here's a genetic upgrade. Oh, you guys are ready to evolve now. And I see the whole plan playing out, and I see how Flat Earth just completely destroys that. If you look at it through the Flat Earth perspective, you're like, no, those ain't aliens. Those are demonic entities. Those are fallen angels. It's a trap.
Well, yeah, that was one of the early realizations that I had when I started looking into this. Because one of the things that people always say is, well, what's the motive then? Why, if this is all a big lie, why would NASA lie to us? I said, well, you got to take this a lot further back than NASA. You got to go back to Genesis in the garden, when the serpent said, hath God really said? Really? Did God really say that? Did God really consistently describe this place as a circular, still, flat Earth set on pillars under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4? Did he really say that? That's how far back it goes. And when you realize how many people have become atheists, specifically because of the spinning heliocentric ball in an ever-expanding universe model, where Carl Sagan and everybody else made it quite clear that we are irrelevant, that we are a speck of dust, the pale blue dot in a backwater area of the universe. You are nothing. It's all random chance and evolution. All of that comes from the spinning heliocentric ball model. It's what made evolution even remotely plausible. More people have become atheists because of the spinning heliocentric ball than anything else, because of that whole paradigm. But if you take that whole paradigm away and you realize you're in a divinely created terrarium, well, evolution goes out the window and the ancient aliens is obliterated. The whole thing is...
That's exactly why this topic is important to the church, important to saints. It definitely should not be something that causes discord or strife. If it does, then we flat earthers just need to drop the topic and talk about something else. But if somebody's looking into this, if God has put on their heart that they need to look into the flat earth to see if it's so, then the reason why it's so important is because there's so many lost people who are now getting their evolution, heliocentric view shattered and they're looking for truth. And there's not enough saints in these arenas when it gets down to where, when we're talking one-on-one, that they need to believe on what Jesus did on the cross and faith alone for their salvation, because there's too many New Agers that are prophesying and proselytizing, all of them in there. So it's literally a huge battle in those arenas, and we are losing the numbers because a lot of saints have grabbed on to the ball theory because they're trying to put the Bible to the ball their whole life, and they won't swallow their pride in order to go save some souls in the white harvest. So it is very dire topic for saints, but only for the reason to save other souls. We should not be arguing with other saints on if the earth is flat. If God starts showing you, then look into it, because we need as many people in there, as many saints in these arenas as possible, because there's so many people searching for truth. So that's why I think it's one of the most important topics of today for the church, and it's one we're losing.
Well, it's a very people. Why are you so obsessed with this, Rob? I'm like, well, because I was raised my entire life and have spent my entire life saying the Bible is my source for truth, and I can take it literally. Well, if this is what the Bible says, and it's not true, I mean, if we are on a spinning heliocentric ball, Genesis crumbles, the whole Bible falls apart. Really, because from Genesis to Revelation, it is, people don't want to, they don't like it when I say this, but it's true. From Genesis to Revelation, it is a flat earth book. But if it's not a heliocentric ball, then what do we do with that? This is at this point, if that's true, then basically all we've got is a bunch of ignorant sheep herders and fishermen writing fairy tales. They're clearly clueless. And if they're clueless about our origin, how can we trust anything that the Bible says about our destination, or about the end, and everything in between? And you might as well just throw the thing out. I mean, that is what it came down to for me. As I'm going, wow. I mean, and I have literally cried myself to sleep on numerous occasions over this past year, going, God, what is the deal? I mean, is your word true or not? Because to be fair, there is still a lot of very compelling evidences out there for the ball. Granted, I don't have the answers to. But at the same time, we've already talked about a number of things that are not possible on a ball. So, this became critically important to me, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to try to twist and mangle the scriptures to my preconceived ideas and biases. I'm going to mold my thought processes to what it says. And as I just decided to take it literally and believe what it says is true, I started going out and looking for the evidence of it, and started seeing stuff, and started documenting. I mean, I produced about 100 videos, for crying out loud, and several hundred pages of printed content on it. If people are actually willing to go look at this stuff, in my mind, it fully and totally, completely, absolutely validates the scriptures as true from Genesis to Revelation. And if it's true about the beginning, then it's going to be true about the end. And if it's true about the end, then as Dave Murphy says, you know what? He was quoting Kent Hovind. He said, there are two possibilities, and both of them are terrifying. One, there is no God, and this is just, all useless, and what's the point of being here? We're just, random chance and blah, 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 headed for destruction, and that's terrifying. Or two, there is a God, and wow, he's probably got rules, and we better start listening to him. And through the course of this research, it led him to believe in the latter, that there is a God, and he has rules, and we better start listening to him. So he's gone back to Genesis, and he's now keeping the Sabbath. He's doing the feast. He's trying to understand things and walk in God's ways. He's still tripped up on the New Testament. I've had some interesting conversations with him about it, but he's in the book, man. And the Holy Spirit takes over from there. We can certainly help these brothers and guide them along and help them maybe with their questions and stuff like that. But if they're in the Word of God and they're reading it for themselves, and the Holy Spirit says in 1 John chapter 2, you have no need of a teacher. The Holy Spirit is your teacher. The Holy Spirit's the one that inspired the text. So do you think the Holy Spirit might be able to explain it to somebody? Well, I think so.
The water will be collected at the equator. I mean, if you spin a wet tennis ball, you spin a wet tennis ball, the water shoots off at the equator, essentially. So all the water will be gathered around the equator. So why is there land at the equator? Doesn't make any sense. The other thing that's about the spinning Earth is looking at the stars. Now, directly above the axis of spin is the pole star, Polaris, okay, directly over the North Pole. And we're told that the reason that all the stars spin around the North Star is because the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Okay, seems to make sense, because if you put a long exposure camera pointing at the North Star, you'll see the stars will make perfect circles around, perfect star trails. The only problem is the Earth is also orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles an hour. Okay, the Sun is moving, dragging the Earth and all the planets up that way or that way at 600,000 miles an hour. So why do we see perfect circles? You know, because that's the slowest speed, that's slowest motion in that mix, and yet the Earth is moving 67 times faster that way and 600 times faster that way. So you should see the stars do all sorts of strange motions, but you don't. You only see them make these perfect circles. That tells me that it's the stars that are moving, not the Earth. The thing is, what the scientists will give you is calculations and and theories why that happens. But we have experience. We see things and they either make sense or they don't make sense. What the scientists do is substitute our common sense and our intuition for calculations and theory, and we're supposed to believe the calculations rather than what we experience ourselves. There was a famous experiment back in the 1800s in England called the Bedford Levels experiment. Now, the Bedford Levels is a canal that is perfectly straight for 6 miles. Okay, so what a chap called Samuel Rowbottom did was he took a telescope, put it in the water about 8 inches above the water, and he had a friend, in a rowboat with a flag on the back, row all the way to the other end, and he was able to see the flag on the back of the rowboat the whole distance. Now, according to spherical trigonometry, the curve of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. So over 5 miles, that's 5 times 5, 25, times 8, which is 200, that's 200 inches, which works out at 16 feet. That means the boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. You shouldn't have been able to see the boat. Now, the scientists will say, oh, refraction and this and light bending around the Earth and stuff. But the fact is, it's perfectly flat, and he in his book he puts forward many arguments that show that, or many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat. They say that you see the mast go down last. Is literally just the way your vision works. Yeah, it's perspective and atmospherics basically. The limit of your vision is supposedly 3 miles, and then after 3 miles you're supposed to see the boat start to go over the horizon. It's funny that Neil deGrasse Tyson again says that explains that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane. He says this: you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane because you're not high enough. The Earth is so big that you can't get high enough to see the curvature. Yet you can apparently see a boat go over the curvature over the distance of 3 miles, which doesn't make sense. The thing is, when you look out and you see a boat start to go over the horizon, if you suddenly get a pair of binoculars and look, it comes back again. And once it goes out the sight of your binoculars, if you get a telescope, it comes back again. It doesn't go over any curve of the horizon. What we found, many people have done experiments with very high-powered zoom cameras, and they've watched a boat sail out to sea, and they've just kept trained on this boat. And what they see is, after a very long distance, you see an atmospheric effect where the bottom of the boat disappears and starts, and the top of the boat inverts, so you see a sort of mirror image. And that, with your eyesight, basically the bottom of the boat just melts into the horizon. One of the best examples of that is the Antwerp Notre Dame spire, which can be seen something like 240 kilometers away from the spire. So that should be over a mile below the horizon, and you can still see it.
This assertion of boats going over the edge of a ball Earth is silly. Check out this footage from a channel called Wide Awake. This guy filmed some great sky and horizon shots showing that objects can be brought back into view, and more importantly, his shots also demonstrate diffraction and the resolution limit of these objects at those distances and at those angles. As you can see in his footage, the boats, once they are close enough to resolve, appear like little smudges, and they also appear to be floating above the horizon. The boats are not mirages floating in the air, although there is an inferior mirage that appears inverted below the actual boats in his footage. To prove this, he actually tracks them all the way in, and the closer a boat gets, the more resolved it becomes, and the more detail you can see. This is a perfect illustration of visual acuity and the angular resolution of the camera, which is obviously better than our eyes, but the principle is the same. And again, if you increase your altitude, say to the top of a hotel or in an airplane or on a mountain, you create better angles and you can of course see further, but even there you will eventually reach a resolution limit. It is unavoidable, but it is not an edge that Santa Claus is falling over. Look at the water in his shots. Some would call the resolved water line the horizon, but you can clearly see boats fully in the water beyond the resolved water line. You can even barely make out the water being sprayed up from the motor. The surface of the water extends beyond the resolved water line, but it is too far and at too sharp of an angle for the camera or your eye to completely resolve. There's also a lot of diffraction going on due to this angle and the light or atmospheric conditions. Therefore, you get a blurred section that reflects the sky and the boat as an inferior mirage. Again, this happens beyond a point where the eye or camera can no longer clearly resolve the water due to the angle and diffraction. It is where your eye or camera can no longer distinguish points of light. The image blurs and turns into a mirror under certain conditions. Look at the shimmering and changing edges of the top of the waterline as the camera resolves it at its maximum distance. Beyond this distance, the water is at too small of an angle to resolve any detail. At this point, it does exactly what a road will do on a hot day. It reflects the light waves like a mirror because the eye or camera can more easily resolve these reflected light rays than they can the actual surface of the road or water. On the ground or on the water, you can see the inferior mirage or reflection of the boats and cars. Some people will claim that the boat itself is a superior mirage and that the actual boat is over the edge of a ball. This is silly for two reasons. Number one, a superior mirage is inverted, and number two, in this footage, he tracks these boats the entire way in, so you can verify with your own eyes how a boat will barely come into view as a small blur, and then as it gets closer and closer, the angles get larger and your eye can then resolve more and more detail. This is observable, repeatable, apparent, and can be verified by anyone. Unlike NASA's theories, of course, that nobody can verify unless they can build a little rocket ship.
There's been a few famous examples just recently of a man who took a picture across the Great Lakes from Michigan and was able to see, I believe, Chicago, which he shouldn't have been able to see. And the television station basically said it was a mirage.
This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage.
You typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
But they always say it's a mirage, but for a mirage to happen, you have to have very specific atmospheric conditions. And there have been so many people who have seen exactly the same thing on different days, different seasons, and always the same. You know, it's not a mirage. It's simply that you're looking across a plane. You see in a kind of pyramid shape. Yeah, you have a horizon at your eye level, and everything above the horizon will go down into the horizon. Yeah, everything below the horizon will seem to go up. Just like if you look you're in a long hallway, you'll see that the walls will start to move in, and the roof and the floor will start to move into the center. Yeah, so literally between you and the object you're looking at, there's all sorts of things, sort of like waves going up and down, and while you can't see them, if they're beyond the limit of your sight, they're still, sometimes they can still obscure what you're looking at. But it's just because they're between you and it, and it's just the way, it's literally perspective. It's better if I could draw a diagram, but it's a very difficult subject to get your head around if you're not used to it. But it is perspective. One sort of other proof is there's a place in Bolivia called Salón de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's literally 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across, and it's perfectly flat. When it rains, literally you get an inch of water, and it looks like a perfect mirror. Now, how does that happen on a sphere? Yeah, it shows you that, you know, if you're one end of this salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away. So it's just showing you that you know, the Earth is flat, and without the effect of the waves in the sea, you'll be able to see a whole lot further. If you were to go to NASA and download one of their photos of the Earth in the moon's sky and put it in Photoshop, okay, drop the saturation and the levels down, you'll see that the Earth has been pasted in, because you'll see a rectangular box around the Earth. It's all fraud, it's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent. There are no images of Earth from space.
Defenders of the globe like to quote their scientific data. They say, we have scientific data that proves the Earth is a sphere. We have scientific data that proves the heliocentric model. We have scientific data that proves the infinite universe is full of billions of planets and stars and suns and whatever. Well, this simple phrase that came to mind the other day will essentially nullify every single piece of scientific data ever released by NASA. Every computer system ever developed, every software program, every single line of code ever written or used, either the computers, the software, or the code, for use by NASA or any other science agency, was based on the assumption that the Earth is a sphere and it orbits a sun that's 93 million miles away. All of the computers, all of the software, all of the code are all based on the false assumption that the Earth is a sphere. So, this simple phrase that came to mind the other day, the one that we all know and are familiar with, the one that programmers like to use, garbage in, garbage out. That's it. If you start with erroneous data, you end up with erroneous data. Garbage in, garbage out. Period.
I think they literally hide the flat Earth, the reality of it, in these complex documents. And it's meant to frustrate you. It's meant to confuse you. Because you look at this for the first time, your first time coming into flat Earth, you take a look at this. If I presented this document to you and says, okay, you want to learn about the flat Earth? Here you go, read this. And then let's have a conversation. The first time you'd look at this, you'd be like, what the f***? Are you fucking serious? This is what the flat Earth is? This is the model? How the fuck am I going to understand? The Earth's a fucking globe. I don't want to look at this shit. Let me look at NASA's photos. They make it intentionally complex. They're hiding the flat Earth in this math. And I don't mean bullshit math as in it's right or wrong, but they convolute the document with all these calculations. Okay? All of these calculations. I guarantee you, if you spoke to the author about this and asked him to give you a 5-minute presentation to explain this, he wouldn't be able to do it. He would not be able to do it. He'd just get frustrated. You wanted to say to him, hey, I read your paper, on tsunamis and using the flat Earth model. So do you believe the Earth is flat? And first thing he'd do is look at you and be like, oh, you're not one of those people, are you? The fuck do you mean I'm not one of those people? You wrote a paper titled Tsunami using the flat Earth model. So what the fuck do you write a paper about this shit for? If you don't believe it. See, it's these type of people we need to get in contact with. People like this who write these papers. And you just sit them down and say, hey, can you break it down for me? I want to understand this because I'm looking into the flat Earth. I want to know how things work on the flat Earth. Explain to me why you believe the Earth is flat. And I guarantee you they'll get
Ok, pues estamos terminando este y ahora voy a buscar otro. No sé cuál, no acuerdo qué tanto. A ver si es que puedo encontrar algo por aquí. Un momento. Sí, esos son los más importantes, no importante, los más que los que yo empecé. Los otros ya son, pues, a ver, vamos a poner este de, ojalá que ODD no me haga strike mark. Pero animo, no importa. A ver. Un momento. A ver, este es uno que yo empecé. Aquí está este. Espera, tiene uno antes. Yo creo que yo miré ese. ¿Dónde está? Oh, aquí está. Media hora. Está bien. Vamos a verlo.
El doctor ya te puede ver y verá más de lo que piensas.
Esta porquería de ads. Los quisiera quitar.
Like everyone else, you were born into bondage. Born into a prison for your mind.
Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
You'll want to remember this moment as the last time you thought the flat earth was stupid.
Hello everyone, this is ODD, and yes, I'm finally admitting that even though I don't like labels, I'm a flat earther. Based on my research for the past 10 months, our world is very different from the model that we are being taught by the authority on the matter. It took me a while to come to terms with this, and it took even longer to gain the courage to talk about it. It can be pretty embarrassing to go against popular opinion, but this is real. It's not a psyop, it's not a distraction, and it's not a bandwagon. It's a reasonable debate. It's thousands of people taking what we've been told and comparing it to what we see and experience, and that we, the people, are being lied to. We have no real pictures of the Earth, and no matter how hard we try, we just can't find the curvature. Not only that, but flight paths make more sense on a flat map, and large bodies of water not being able to curve into a giant ball completely resonates.
Forensically speaking, the globe model is so very unlikely that any good detective wouldn't believe a fucking word the globe says. The globe story is so full of circumstantial, impossible coincidences, which only prove that the globe is a fucking liar.
We'll be going over that in this video, as well as other reasons why the world isn't what we're led to believe. I appreciate you tuning in. Let's get started. Our daily observations of the Earth are consistent with a flat and stationary surface. Most, if not all, ancient civilizations knew that the Earth was flat. The people of today would say that ancient cultures were ignorant and unaware, yet they accomplished great feats that we still can't accomplish to this day. The truth is that they had real knowledge, and some of us only have an education. But what is an education? Education is when you are told what to think and how to think. Those that are able to remember and regurgitate what they've been told on command are considered well educated. But there is a big difference between being educated and being intelligent. Just because you believe what you've been told doesn't make it true. In fact, the flat versus spherical Earth is a debate that has never really died. It's been raging for centuries. It was a huge argument as recently as the early and mid-1900s, but with programs like NASA, founded in 1958, the latter half of the 20th century was a win for the spherical Earth. It wasn't a question for the average person anymore. Though at the time the shape of the Earth was still up to be proven, NASA claims that they went to the moon and captured a shot of the spherical Earth as if they always knew it was indeed spherical.
Those of you who think this technical difficulty was planned and think I'm scamming you, go do it for yourself. Because you're going to find the exact same thing. I got nothing to hide here. This is live on the air, okay? I'm going to zoom in on the Earth in Photoshop. Can you see the Earth? To image, adjust, levels, and I'm going to bring the levels over here. And I'm going to bring the levels up. Uh-oh. What is that? Why is there a square box around the Earth, allegedly taken from the scientists on the moon in Apollo 17. And people wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. I mean, they're always out there saying, you know, Rob, everybody's trying to show you stuff from space, and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars.
Rockets or balloons have gone up. The horizon rises to the eye of the observer all the way up, and that's only consistent with a flat plane. Their theory just gets more and more wild as time has gone on. And so, yeah, it began with the spinning Earth going 1,000 miles per hour, which is then circling around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, which then they decided the sun wasn't a heliocentric model, but more of an acentric model, where they don't know where the center is, and we're just exploding out of a big bang. So the sun, we're spinning around the sun, and then the sun and us are spinning around the Milky Way galaxy, they say, at 500,000 miles per hour. And then the entire Milky Way galaxy, they say, is shooting off from the Big Bang at 670 million miles per hour, almost the speed of light. So there's at least 4 rip-raging, contradictory motions supposedly going at all times, yet you don't experience any of it, nor can you measure any of it using the stars. The flat motionless Earth, not only is it the greatest conspiracy of all, it's also the easiest to prove. I mean, it just is flat and motionless, just as it appears. Look into it more and more, make it a thing to try and debunk it, if you will. You know, even if you want to do it that way. Negative reinforcement works too. Try as you will, you're only going to find proofs for the flat motionless Earth. You're not going to confirm that you're on a spinning ball.
I want to tell you a story.
I used to believe that Jesus was a Catholic God, God of the Gentiles.
I imagined that Jesus was Italian.
The New Testament was one of those books that I saw nuns reading on the subway.
I was expecting to find a handbook on how to persecute the Jews. I'm reading a story written by Jews about Jewish people.
One thing you don't do is you don't talk about Jesus.
I'm gonna get ostracized. They're gonna think I'm crazy. And
are you out of your mind? You're not Jewish anymore.
Absolutely not. Do not look into this.
You are a traitor to your people. Jesus was the Messiah.
He wants relationship. He wants fellowship. Believing in Jesus is the most Jewish thing I can do.
I mean, to have a close relationship with God, the truth is worth it. Life with Yeshua would be worth it.
I've been involved in Jewish outreach for over 30 years. This new form of evangelism that One for Israel so effectively uses is really revolutionary in 2,000 years. The ministry of One for Israel is an extremely valuable one in effectively communicating to the world that Jesus is a Jew, that Jesus is the Messiah of our Jewish people, and that Jewish people are coming to faith in Messiah in several different languages, but most notably in modern Hebrew, into all corners of the Jewish world, to a generation of young Israelis who are in communities that would frown upon their investigation of Jesus. Many of them have phones or have tablets and are viewing the One for Israel videos either in Hebrew or in English, and are effectively being reached for Yeshua, for Jesus the Messiah. If you want to be on the crust of what God is doing now, the gospel of Jesus the Jewish Messiah is going out from Israel to the world. It's a revolution. It hasn't been seen in 2,000 years. God has raised up this ministry of One for Israel for such a time as this. I would encourage you to support the ministry as they bring the good news of Messiah Jesus to a very dark and needy world. I'm One for Israel.
We made it! BMO has arrived.
Hello?
You said it. Hello to more ways to save money, grow your wealth, grow your business.
Just what we needed, another big bank.
Not so fast. How many banks do you know that reward you for saving every month?
He's got a good point.
Did I mention BMO has more fee-free ATMs than the 2 largest U.S. banks combined?
BMO?
Just BMO, actually. Quick question. Will all this stuff fit in your car? Should I get rid of the mug?
BMO.
The curvature of the Earth eludes us. Either the Earth is much larger in circumference than we are told, or the curve just doesn't exist. People assume that there is a curve, but it's never really been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Cameras with fisheye lenses, Hollywood movies, and NASA CGI are the closest we get to seeing curvature.
The deception and the lies are just so pervasive, and they're just so deep that I swear it gives me a headache.
The surface of water is always level. This is just natural physics. We know this, that water, if unobstructed and uncontained, will flow outwards, finding it the easiest course to maintain its own level, right? So, but the Ball Earth model claims that the oceans are huge 100-mile walls of curved water curving around the ball. That's ridiculous. They say that gravity makes this possible, but you don't see that. You go to the beach and you see a completely flat horizon. You see water just ever so gently coming up on the shore.
So there's the pretty blue marble that NASA claims we are living on, with circumference of 24,901 and 3959 radius. So to find the curvature, you take 8 inches times your distance squared. That's 8 inches times your distance squared, and if you don't square the distance, you end up with this, and this is not what NASA has shown us. They have given us a beautiful blue marble that we love. So you get 8 inches for 1 mile, 32 inches in 2 miles, 16.6 feet with 5 miles, so on and so forth. So what I did is I shot this pier, which is in Daytona Beach, Florida, and as you can see, between the water and the walkway of the pier is about 12 to 16 feet based on the height of the people and the railing. So I started at Granada, which is 4.92 miles away, and I shot this, and based on that distance and the formula, there should be 16 feet of curvature, but obviously you can still see the entire gap under the walkway there between that and the water. So in addition to that, behind that pier is actually a lighthouse, which you can see right above the pier. You can see the light. That is 16 miles away from my location, and I shot that lighthouse. Now that lighthouse is 175 feet tall, and the curvature from 16 miles away should be 170 feet. You can clearly see about the entire lighthouse beyond that pier. So like I said, there should be 170 feet of curvature, but there's none. And those hotels there are even further. Those are in New Smyrna, which is 20 miles away. If NASA is right, and there is, we do live on a ball, they're going to have to make up that curvature. If it's not in the 20 miles I'm shooting, well then that means it's got to be made up further on down the line. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we live on this ball and then say, oh, you can't detect the curvature. Well, you got to detect it somewhere, because if it's not dropping here, it's going to have to drop even more down the lines in order to make that circle, that ball they say we live on. And it's pretty round. That blue marble they give us is perfectly round.
Lighthouses are one great example. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England, it's 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. Why can you still see it? Another one worth mentioning that people be familiar with is the Statue of Liberty. It stands 326 feet above sea level, and on a clear day can be seen as far as 60 miles away. Now, if the Earth was a globe at the dimensions that they give us, that would put Lady Liberty at an impossible 2,074 feet below the horizon.
No elegiste llamarte Juanita y tener juanetes, las alergias de tu mamá, ni la diabetes del abuelo. Pero sí puedes elegir a un excelente equipo de especialistas que trabajan juntos para cuidarte de lo que no elegiste. Kaiser permanente.
No, not one picture of the Earth. Imagine that. 2016, and we still don't have a picture of our home. Thousands of satellites supposedly orbiting the Earth. Why can't we get thousands of pictures? One shot with the whole Earth in it. Hell, we should have a channel on cable that shows the Earth rotating 24 hours a day, every day. Nope. Let's listen to NASA's very own Robert Simmons talk about how we get our fake pictures of Earth.
In 1972, we saw our home in a new way. Apollo 17 astronauts snapped this picture.
It gave people the first look at their home planet as a single entity.
Last week, scientists at NASA released this. The shot is compiled from data from NASA's VIRS instrument, which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this, and then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from Space album, which may be one of the most mind-expanding collections of images in human history. Then in 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simmons made this. Simmons' job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Excuse me, I'm allergic to bullshit. Not having one authentic picture of the Earth alone is a huge red flag.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
The flat Earth model is a working model. It's by no means definitive due to the nature of this massive cover-up. For the past 500 years, we've been completely buying into the Copernicus heliocentric model, but what we do know about the flat Earth is based on the azimuthal equidistant map that seems to be working out. This map goes as far back as the year 1000 and possibly earlier, now used as an official map by the U.S. Geological Survey and also as the official logo for the United Nations. Is this our real home being hidden from us in plain sight? I think it is. The first thing a lot of people say is, where's the edge? Well, look at this map where Antarctica is a 360-degree ice barrier that holds the water in. These ice walls are real, and they stand 150 feet above the surface of the water. Then you need to understand that there is no independent access to Antarctica. Average people can only go there on a guided tour. It has no towns, no cities, and no permanent residences. What's past the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by 12 nations and more later on, states that Antarctica is for peaceful purposes only. No military activities, just scientific research and government exploration. Expeditions by any party must be discussed in advance. It's the longest and most successful treaty between nations. The treaty also states that there are ships, stations, and equipment to ensure compliance of the treaty. Sounds like military activity to me. Anyway, so this azimuthal equidistant map appears to be correct for the most part. Over the centuries, there's been other maps that look pretty close to it as well. Let's look at an interesting story that was recently in the news that supports this flat map. A woman gave birth on a flight from Bali to Los Angeles, so the flight made an emergency landing in Alaska. Here's what it would look like on a globe. Now, here's what it would look like on a flat Earth. Which one makes more sense? Exactly. A big issue I was having with the flat Earth for the longest time was the sunrise and sunsets. I realized that it was a perspective issue. First, you must understand that the sun is not 93 million miles away. If it was, we would never see anything like this here. This is concentrated because it's closer. It's much more probable that the sun is only a few thousand miles away and that it's the same size as the moon. Once you comprehend this, all of the sudden, solar eclipses make sense. Holy fucking shit! Something that makes sense! Okay, so the sun is close, which gives it the ability to spotlight the area that it's over, and when it leaves your view, due to perspective, it takes the light with it. There is a generous amount of light where the sun is at, but since it's so close, it doesn't spread its light like it would if it were bigger and further. The sun circumnavigates the Earth like a huge clockwork. Sometimes that takes a while to sink in. Alright, let's talk about the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect states that when a moving object leaves the ground, the Earth continues to rotate, meaning that when shooting a gun at a certain distance, the bullet would be a little off due to the Earth's rotation. If that's the case, then airplanes would have to account for the Coriolis effect, but they don't. This is only a few things that work better on a flat, motionless Earth. Do you need 100 excuses as to why you're not feeling any motion or seeing any curvature? Are those excuses easier to believe? Or is it easier to use Occam's razor and go with what our senses are telling us? The Earth is flat and not spinning.
Now, real quick, let's kind of just explain the Coriolis effect in layman's terms. The Coriolis effect is the effect that when the bullet leaves the barrel of the gun, it is actually leaving the surface of the Earth. So as the bullet leaves the barrel of the gun, the Earth is still rotating, and the bullet is not rotating with the Earth. So the Earth will actually rotate out from underneath of the bullet while it is in flight.
Can't go wrong with Thomas's Bagels.
Mom, your purse is in the fridge again.
This one is a touchy subject. This whole fucking video is a touchy subject. So anyway, this one's hard to get across to people big time. But outer space is up for debate. Space programs are compartmentalized, and most astronauts are Freemasons that have to swear an oath of secrecy when dealing with the so-called missions. The thing is that there is so much footage of NASA and other space agencies making mistakes. Sometimes we could see bubbles in the spacewalks. Sometimes we could see harnesses and wires on the people in the International Space Station. The permed hair that moves nothing like it would in zero gravity. These are huge red flags. Not to mention the Van Allen radiation belt. The Van Allen radiation belt is a layer of energetic charged particles that is held in place around a magnetized planet such as Earth by the planet's magnetic field. Sounds kinda like a dome if there is one. Oddly enough, one of NASA's employees admitted that this radiation belt needs to be figured out before humans could pass through it. Listen closely.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Let's talk about satellites. We've already discussed how there are no pictures of the Earth, so are satellites even real? Not likely. Ground towers are built all over the world and are more than adequate to relay our television, radio, and cell phone service.
All GPS is done through land-based towers, and things like Google Earth are taken with high-altitude planes, and most of them are just done with cars on street level. Did you know that satellites were actually invented by Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author?
I didn't know that.
they shortly became science fact after that. The geostationary satellite, look it up. It was created by a science fiction author. And then within a decade, NASA claims to have sent a real one up there, and ever since then, that's where we get all our communications from.
So if satellites were real, we would constantly hear stories of them being hit by meteors or comets, and that doesn't happen. No one's ever lost their direct TV feed during the Perseids meteor shower because one of the meteors knocked out one of the satellites. It doesn't happen, it's never happened, and it won't happen. And that to me tells me there is no satellites. You would constantly be worried about them, and you would constantly hear about them having something happen, and it's so rare that you hear that.
So you may or may not have heard the term cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when new information challenges your beliefs and you just can't let go. It's just like that scene in The Matrix.
No. I don't believe it. It's not possible. Stop. Let me out. Let me out. I want out.
We have a rule. We never free a mind once it's reached a certain age.
It's not easy going through this kind of deception and then realizing that your whole life was spent thinking and believing one thing when it's the opposite. Nobody wants to feel like they've been fooled, like they've been had. I'm a human just like you, and I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be on this kind of journey. This journey of realization and reckoning. This journey of putting everything I know to the side so I can absorb information that seems ridiculous, yet so sensible. It's time to say fuck it. It's not your fault that you were wrong. It's not your fault that you fell for a trick that the whole world also fell for. I'm right here with you. It's time to take down your mental barrier and recognize that we have a lot of work to do in order to find out what this place really is and why we're here. It's not to be slaves of the dollar. It's not to be slaves of the clock. Our reality is being manipulated and hidden from us. Please wake up and try to awaken those around you. So how did this happen? Okay, let's start in the classroom. The first time anybody enters a school classroom, they are introduced to the globe model of the Earth. This three-dimensional scale model of the Earth that has never been proven was invented in the 1400s. Fast forward to 1927, a big-budget movie company called Universal Pictures came out with its movie intro, and guess what? The spinning ball Earth still hasn't been proven. This is 30 years before NASA was founded. Over the years, Universal kept coming out with similar logo intros, and to this day, we see the spinning ball Earth before many of the movies that we watch. Besides, there are countless movies about outer space that use the same model. We have been indoctrinated, and it's as simple as that. For the spherical Earth to remain unproven after this long is a wake-up call to everybody that lives here. We need to shed this programming right here, right now, and find out what the fuck is going on. No more embracing this sick illusion that was created by psychopaths. I'm going to keep searching for answers and trying to make something happen. All I want to know is, who's coming with me?
Asked to define the word woman during her Supreme Court confirmation hearings in 2022, Judge Ketanji Jackson famously demurred, saying, "I'm not a biologist." Well, I am a biologist, and I'm here to help. To that end, let me rephrase the question to Judge Jackson. Are sex categories in humans, male and female, real, immutable, and binary, or are they merely social constructs? Answer: real. That's just the way it is, and we all know it. Immutable. It can't be changed. And binary. There are only two sexes, not 3 or 4 or 57. This is true throughout the plant and animal kingdoms. An organism's sex is defined by the type of gamete, sperm or ova, it can or
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
An explorer, like the Great Magellan.
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
Right before your surgery, I asked if you had packed your cell phone, and you said, which one?
When? Skylar, I was medicated. I mean, I could have said the world was flat.
You know what I think? I think you accidentally told the truth.
The world was flat.
You know what I think? You accidentally told the truth.
The world was flat.
You know what I think? You accidentally told the truth.
Really, the evidence shows me that it's flat and stationary. There is much more evidence based on just pure analysis that it's flat and stationary.
So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Really, we're in big trouble as far as lack of critical thinking and lack of free thinking. We really are in big trouble. We need to step it up as far as the awakening goes. You really need to put your thinking cap on, and you really need to start to look at these things and look at them with a critical eye and with a critical mind.
We're looking for ways to maximize our productivity this quarter. Thoughts, Martin?
Shoulda bought Dixie. These weak store brand plates are risky business. Big thumbs down.
Next time, get Dixie Ultra Plates, 3 times stronger than the leading store brand. Dixie, make it right.
Ok, pues sí. A ver quién puede entrar aquí para tener una charla. Gracias a todos por estar viendo. Gracias por las vistas, suscripciones, por el compartir este video en otras plataformas y también por los superchats y todo. A ver, vamos a estar dando... A ver, Es porque tengo que... poner aquí... Wow, nadie hizo caso a eso. Ok. Perdonen a todos. Estoy mirando aquí en Discord si no se han... Ahí se pueden agregar. Ahí tenemos otras conversaciones con los administradores y otros TPs y otros, ya saben, boludos que pasan por ahí. Pues sí. Ojalá que todos están haciendo bien, especialmente estos días. Se siente como, pues para mí, se siente como que si todo se está yendo bien despacio. Pero a la misma vez no se puede hacer mucho, ¿verdad? Ah, es muy difícil. Tengo aquí mi cafecito. Y pues a ver qué dicen estos mis tepelinos. No, mis tepes. A ver qué. A ver qué pasa, ¿verdad? Oh, cada día que pasan estos. Hoy es ¿qué? Hoy es miércoles. Sí, hoy es miércoles. Ah, vamos a tener yo creo que va a aparecer otro video en YouTube mío. A ver si puedo ir a mirar eso. Ojalá que le estén gustando el video, a los videos que estoy poniendo aquí. A ver, ¿cuándo? Oh, no. Va a salir mañana a las... ay, ¿qué tiempo? Mañana a las 3 de la mañana de Los Ángeles. Sería 8 horas adelantados en España. Yo creo que serían las 11 en España, por ahí. Y en Brasil o Sudamérica va a ser por ahí por las, no sé, las 7, no. Sí, por ahí, por las 6 o 7 de la mañana. Ahí siempre mis videos van a salir por ese tiempo o van a salir ahí por las 12 de la tarde de Los Ángeles, que serían las 8 en España, yo creo. Y después va a salir en Sudamérica, serían las 4 por ahí. Pues sí. A ver cómo hacemos todo esto. Yo estoy tratando de pues demostrar a todos los que quieren ver los videos que estoy poniendo. Estos son los videos en que yo entré en este tema. ¿Ya? Ahora yo lo miro completamente diferente ahora, ¿verdad? Es completamente diferente. Pues creo que sería más eficiente. Agarré una violación. Pues eso es lo que pasa cuando tienes mucho, ¿cómo se dice? Videos que estás poniendo en esto. Diferente. Ok, a ver. Vamos a mirar otro video. Como la gente no quiere entrar, pues me hago otro. A ver. Ahora vamos a playlist. Ok. Don't fear the truth. Vamos a ir a esa página. Don't fear the truth. Creo que es este.
From the spacecraft.
Flat Earth tides. Pues sí, como les digo, yo he demostrado esto antes. Y son videos de lo que yo entré en este tema.
In Nova Scotia, Canada. It's the biggest tide change in the world. But what force could move such a massive body of water? Gravity.
This is a map of tidal amplitude, which is the difference between the low and the high tide in a given place. So what that means is that the low tide might be a meter below sea level, and the high tide might be a meter above sea level, and that would be a tidal amplitude of 2 meters, which is considered very high. And those high tidal amplitudes are here in red. So this is where the difference between the low tide and the high tide is the greatest. What you'll notice with this is that there are places where the tidal amplitude is very, very low. It's actually 0. And those are the places here in pink. In these places, there is no tide. Low tide is the same as high tide. What that translates to is 0 tidal amplitude. So every place in pink has 0 tide. Now, the places where there is no tide, these are called amphidromic points. I will call them tidal nodes because that's the more commoner term for them. And they're here. And these are the places, these points, that there is no tide. Literally no tide at all. And there's tons of them all over this map. There's these ones in the center of the oceans, which are quite easy to see. But if you look closely at this map of amphidromic points, tidal nodes, you'll see there's also a number of much smaller ones that operate in smaller regions. I'm going to circle these 3. Look, there's 3 tidal nodes. These are areas, again, with no tide. where the water is still all year long, all day long, all week long, no tide. Here's another one here. Here's another one here. You can see 3 in here. You start seeing them when you look, you start seeing them all over the place here. See, there's actually 3 up here in Upper Canada. Now, the greatest density of these that I have seen is in the Polar Sea. Now, this is a polar projection map. This is a favorite by flat earthers. And you can see how many of these nodes are in the Arctic Sea. This is the Arctic Sea up here, the North Polar Sea. You can see all the nodes in here. I'm just circling them all. These are places with no tide. This is just a zoom in on that so you can see. It's almost fractal how this looks because you've got all these little nodes here and then you've also got all big nodes all in the sea. Oh, that's where the purples are. These big tidal nodes. These seem to be the center of what's going on with the tides. This is a better chart of the Polar Sea. So this is, again, a North Polar projection. I've placed a big X on the North Pole, and you can see even more in here. It seems almost like there's too many to count, like there's areas where they're just extremely dense, these tidal nodes. So I think there's even some on these islands. These don't have to be underwater, and I'll talk about that later as well. Look at this. It seems like there's 3 in a row in here. All these tiny little tidal nodes. It's almost fractal how this seems to work. There's 2 here. This is Hudson's Bay in Canada, and I'm going to talk about that later. But first, this is the Mediterranean. There's also tidal nodes in the Mediterranean. It's not as dense maybe as in the Polar Sea. This is another one that's on land, actually. And I think it looks like there's one here. You can see this is Cyprus. So that's sort of how the Mediterranean here is aligned. This is the North Sea near the United Kingdom, and you can see these 2 tidal nodes here, as well as a tidal node which they've clearly marked on Sweden or Norway. That would be in Norway. I've also got this side by side with an actual animation. Now, what's nice about this animation, it shows tides. It doesn't just show tidal amplitude. It shows tides in real time. And you can see how high these tides are relatively. These are these huge 2 or 3 meter tides that are all rushing up through this English Channel here. And yet you do have a tidal node very close into here. So you've got these massive tides, but you actually have a tidal node around here. Now this model doesn't show the tidal nodes amazing because you can see some of the tide go in through here. But it's pretty good here where you can see the tides up on this side, then it's up on this side. It's up on this side, and then it's up on this side. And the tidal node itself, the sea level never changes. So this is a better map, a more detailed map of the tidal nodes. And it shows another tidal node with this arrow around New Zealand. So New Zealand's another example of a tidal node that's not under the ocean, but still seems to affect the tides. And what I mean by affect the tides is you can see this arrow. Tides revolve around tidal nodes. So a high tide seems to be a bulge of water that will revolve in a certain direction, and it looks like the direction is different in these different nodes. There's clockwise and there's anti-clockwise, but it has nothing to do with the equator, because this one you can see here is clockwise. This one you can see is counterclockwise. This one you can see is also clockwise. And this one here is counterclockwise, and there's really no pattern to whether it's going to be clockwise or counterclockwise. This shows a live animation of the tides, and you can see exactly what I mean when I say that tides revolve around the nodes. So I told you about those 2 nodes up here in Hudson's Bay. You can see the high tide in red revolving around the coast of Hudson's Bay. You can also see this in New Zealand, which I told you was an on-land tidal node. You can see this high tide in red spinning around New Zealand, and the low tide in blue, so negative tide, also spinning around New Zealand, and they almost look like magnetic fields in the way that this is pictured here around New Zealand. So this is Hudson's Bay again. This is a different tidal animation. And you can see how these tides seem to revolve around Hudson's Bay. And again, there are tidal nodes, 2 tidal nodes here in the center of Hudson's Bay that show no tidal movement whatsoever, while you have huge tidal movement around these shores. And this, again, is New Zealand. And this shows those tides revolving around New Zealand. This is a very helpful map. It is a globe model, but it's a helpful map. This shows you the relative, how relatively really very high these tides are in some of these areas. Now, this only shows half the Earth. You can see a little bit over here in North America. But if you look at South America, the tides are just enormous at the very, very tip of South America. The same is true up here in Great Britain and in the English Channel. Huge amount of tides. If we go back to this earlier map, you can see that there are all those tidal nodes there at the base of South America, just like you may expect if these tidal nodes were what's creating these tides, because you've got a high density of these tides. So you're actually moving a great deal of water against this continent of South America, which is why you've got this black here. This is, I don't know how tall the tidal amplitude is right here, but it's very, very high. I think in some places the amplitude is as much as 4 meters. So this could be a full 4 meters here at in Argentina down here. This is from the Wikipedia article on tidal nodes, and it's extremely sparse. There's very, very little information about what these are and what they do. There's a line about how the moon causes them, but it's frankly laughable that people can think, after looking at tidal nodes and how tides react around tidal nodes, that the moon is doing this. You've got this joke of an animation here on the bottom right that does not correspond whatsoever with the models I've shown you, as well as this one on the top where you have a bulge both on the moon side and on the non-moon side, and nothing on the top or bottom, even though we know that there's a great deal of tide in the southern part and in the northern part of what would be this map here. There's also a list of tidal nodes on Wikipedia. The set of clockwise, points include these, but they've only given us 16 nodes here, but from what I saw from the map, there's 100 of these things. It could be 100. I haven't even counted them. There's so many of these tidal nodes all over the Earth, but in some places they are in far greater density than in other places. What got me into looking at this was taking a trip to Hawaii. I'm from Vancouver. This is a picture on the right of a Vancouver tide. And I went to Hawaii expecting tides to behave similarly as they would in Vancouver. I think most people just assume tides are the same everywhere. But the difference between low tide places and high tide places is it could be a matter of 12 feet, which is, a tall man twice. It's actually an enormous amount of water we're talking about. So it wasn't going on in Hawaii. Hawaii has lots of waves, which I don't think are related to tides. They seem to be wind related in a lot of cases. But the tides, I didn't notice at all. You always notice tides in Vancouver, but I never noticed it once in Hawaii. So I looked into it. I have a few speculations about what tidal nodes are. They could be a sea life living deep under the water that's affecting the water, the movement of the water somehow. I've put in the background my favorite sea life, which is the kraken. It's also it's a fantasy sea life because it's so giant. Nothing that giant exists that we know of. Or plate boundaries. It could just be where tectonic plates collide and where they're moving against each other. The same thing that causes volcanoes, seems to cause volcanoes and earthquakes, could also be causing the tides. And the third speculation is not my speculation, but it's the speculation that everybody accepts, and that's that the moon is causing the tides. And for everybody, for this to be the consensus, the scientific consensus, is extremely embarrassing. It is extremely embarrassing to me that this is the best that science can give us. And this is a model of what the tides would look like if it was the moon. And this is being this is on YouTube as, in fact, what the tides do. But this is nothing like what I've shown you in this presentation. This is pure fantasy.
Gravity's punishing.
Been floating through space too long?
Ok, pues ahí lo vamos a dejar para hoy y vamos a seguir mañana. Am, a ver, vamos a ir a un lugar ahorita. Alguien me mandó, pues nos mandó que ustedes van conmigo. A ver, un momento. A ver.
De Iru, Dani, todos los.
Hola, Will.
Saludos.
Todos los pro.
¿Estás grabando, Will?
¿Puedo o no?
Ahora mismo estamos hablando de cosas privadas.
Ok. Está bien. Yo voy a parar. Ya, no voy a estar grabando. Ahorita.
Tú sabes que se montó un jaleo ahí en el programa de Java.
Ahorita, espera. Ahorita regreso, ¿ok? Ahorita regreso.
Vale.
Pues sí, todos ya saben, ¿verdad? Ya saben qué es y pues ahorita regreso y vamos cáchame en el otro episodio de Salón 24/7. Y si no está en Discord, por favor, vayan a Discord, Better Methods. El enlace estaría abajo de este video, en los comentarios o en la caja de descripción abajo de este video. Gracias por los likes, las vistas, suscripciones, compartiendo este video en cualquier otra plataforma y también por los super chats. Gracias por todo y pues nos miraremos hasta la próxima, ¿ok? Chao, chao.